Whee! All right, so I've kind of had a moment to think about my horrible time at I-29 last night, and learned a lot. Learned stuff. First off, tires that are 3 years old, 3.5 years old now. So luckily, I have some more that will probably help my 60-foot. I just wanted to get as much life as I possibly could out of those because, well, tires are expensive, hard to come by, and you know, we're still doing this on a budget. I am in the process of building the piston and rod motor. It's getting really tricky to find pistons. I want this thing to have around 10-to-1 compression on, and using E85 as a fuel still, because I think that if I was able to get it to spool up a little quicker, have more NA power, I think that would be really advantageous instead of just relying on boost. It looks like kind of the average compression results on the engine are 20. Let's see here, about 120 and ish. So the reason I think I have a good variance in the oil that the engine consumes, I've already gone through a quart, and I've probably maybe put 500 miles on this car, and I did not change the plugs from when, like, my first fire up, running it on gasoline. I know I should have, but I didn't. So I just put a new set of plugs in it. I made sure everything looks good. I scoped the bores, the pistons are spotless, there's no pitting, there's no nothing. The timing strap on the new plug I put in last night is right in the middle. So I think the engine is safe. I'd probably feel comfortable giving it another 2 or 3 pounds. The only good thing that came out of last night, the best pass was 7:15 at 99, and my previous best was 98 miles an hour. And so the boost curve on this old girl is working pretty good. I launched on 8 or 9 pounds, and it ramped up to about 9 or 10. And before, it would launch on like 10.5 pounds and then kind of go cattywampus from 4 to 7 to 8 pounds all over throughout the run. So the 1-2 shift is a lot stronger. It's a lot stronger mid-track, the entire track basically. And so my boost control is in there. This is not a budget once again. This is from a beer beverage company. They're like 69 bucks. This was like $29 for the regulator. And it seems to be working pretty darn good. I had to use a friend of mine, Matt Brobston, to help me kind of dial in CO2 boost control. But I'm pretty pleased with it. There's still a little bit of tweaking I got to do on it, but the engine currently is happy. My catch can, there's still nothing in it, just a tiny bit of oil, barely any oil in it. Even though it's got a good bit of blow by, like you can tell when it's idling, it's just puffing stuff out of that catch can. But my line lock, see, I got my steering wheel, what I wanted to do with it, you know, my CB radio mic attachment for like 20 bucks off of Amazon. But I got my line lock, boost scramble, and bump box, and I got a chance to kind of wire that in, or not wire that in, test that out last night. It's pretty violent, which I've never really had a car with it before, so it's probably fairly normal. But it was basically the same suspension setup as Eddyville, but the track was not sticky like Eddyville was. I don't have any tire slippage on my rim, just obviously I wasn't hooking. I think my best 60 foot of the night was a 172, which was not great. And then I kept running into problems. Cylinder 5 was misfiring, which was causing a lean spike in some spots, and which was shutting itself down, and so it was popping. And then also, and I've already had to deal with this once, is the ECU, which is, I mean, it's mounted not well, but I like easy access to it. The ECU, there's an MS3X card on top of the MS3, so it's a daughter board on top of the main board, and there's like a stack of like 5 connectors that connect those two, and there's nothing holding it on at all. So I think only on like my really aggressive launches would it was starting to lose some sync, and then it would pop and bog. And I had some good launches that probably would have went well had the thing not just decided to crap out on me. But it is what it is. You can't all have good days at the racetrack and keep progressing, you know. I'll probably try to stick to Eddyville, because that 3-hour drive to I-29 for shit results is just, it's really disappointing, and I was frustrated, and it was like 93 degrees, and I mean, it's still hot today. That's why I'm staying indoors I have 2, a crappy old one for free there, and then one over there that I grabbed from a friend of mine. But yeah, so what I'll probably do is, now that I know that the engine is healthy, is we'll wait for another Eddyville night, maybe in a few weeks, and I'll go back out and get some new tires on the wheels and see if we can't best our 146 60 foot, because a few of these runs that were like a 170, 172, if I would have cut 3/10, it would have been a 670, knocking the door with 660. So once that's figured out, then we'll be in the mid-6s, which will be pretty cool. But you know, I'm learning with all this stuff. I've never had a car like this before, and it's just what it is, you know. I'm trying to figure things out. I'm doing my logs. I'm doing a logbook on the runs, the days, the shock settings. I did have to remeasure it again, but a few days ago I noticed that the left side tire was tucking in further, and so I found out that the left side was like 1.25 inches lower than the right side. So I readjusted all the suspension so that way we have an even on both sides. But looking at the car in the videos, it looks like it kind of, like the rear end was doing something separate from the car. And I think I have a half turn in the anti-roll bar, and before I think I only had a 1/4 turn, and so it looks like the car wants to kind of move a certain direction, and so I need to take that back out. I'm gonna have my wife hold my kid in her lap, maybe both kids in her lap, and then I'm gonna do my preload on the anti-roll bar, or I'll just back it off and do like barely a 1/4 of a turn just to take up a little bit of slop. I think it's affecting it pretty greatly. I did loosen rebound by 2 clicks. So what that does, so this thing has about 120% anti-squat, 130%, somewhere around there, is when you loosen your rebound, so your shock going down, it's easier for it to move. It pushes the tire into the ground harder. So that's supposed to give you more grip. I know that's anti-squat stuff is more of a slick thing to have more, but every car is different, and I think I was hitting the tire too hard, because if the videos, like, it doesn't even, the axle moves and then the tire loses grip, and then the front end will come up slightly after that. So I think I need to take that rebound back out of it, and I need to try to get a little bit more transfer of the actual whole body of the car. But you know, and maybe have it not be 1,000,000,000 degrees outside. But and then also my fan, I had those really stupid like clips that have like the round donut with the round zip tie that goes through and holds it to the radiator, and I guess like partway down the track, or probably at the launch, it started knocking them out. And I don't know if you can see in here, but the fan shroud was touching the downpipe and it was melting, and I ignored a burning smell. Luckily it didn't hurt anything, and I was able to get a zip tie around through that hole and then around the radiator back through to secure it back in place, which that's a temporary / probably permanent fix. And then the sync loss, like I said, I got to take the ECU apart. I bet I have I bet that top daughter board is separating again, because I can knock on the side of the ECU and I can get it to stumble. So, and I think that's a sync loss once again. And I think the pins that are in there, it's just like, I don't know, I think it's a 60 pin. And I think the pins on the front side, when that thing rocks back, I think the front pins are the ones that have to do with RPM signal. So, but it's not like it loses a ton of sync. Like on launch, I had 1 sync count loss, and then throughout the entire run I had 7, which is not bad. Like I've seen, usually it'll freak the ECU out when you have, you know, 2 or 3 times that, where you're having successive sync loss in a row. I might, if I can't get that to get fixed, I'll put another crank signal sensor on it, like another cherry sensor, because the one I have on it is kind of a lower temp, and I had to insulate, show this again, I had to insulate this sensor with like that silicone on the outside and the fiberglass on the inside, because it's not super close. I mean, there's a good hand width between there and the downpipe, but what was happening was the downpipe, it would sit there after I shut the car off, and then it would heat soak, and then it would ruin the Hall effect sensor. So the one I have in there right now is only good to like 160, 180 degrees, but it was all I had available at the time, thanks to a friend. And now the black ones that I have are good for like 280 or 300 degrees, but that's the one that originally failed, so I'm kind of hesitant to play with that first. I'll get the ECU taken care of, apart, look at it, make sure everything's tight where it should be. I got to figure out a way to secure that daughter board onto that other card, because this car has had the ECU in that same sort of configuration in it for like 8 or 9 years now, and I've never had a single issue with it. But it's also on batch fire, so that may give it a better tolerance, but I can tap and smack this ECU and it doesn't do anything. You know, this ECU and stuff has like 20 or 30,000 miles on it, a lot of street miles. I've never had a single issue with it, knock on wood, which I don't even know where wood is, so I'll knock on my head. But yeah, so we'll see what it does next time. I'm not sure, but I'll try to be less angry also next time, and just try to treat it as it is. So I'll do some testing, and I think the thing that got me the most, there we go, let's get the Mustang in the background. The thing that got me the most upset was as I beat the hell out of it on the street for like 2 or 3 days, just trying to figure out CO2 boost control. That's when I blew my transmission line, and it literally, but I did like 4 trans brakes in a row, and I have the trans brake set at 4,700 RPM, so you're converting horsepower into heat basically at that point, and it melted the nylon and the rubber on the end of the line, and then when the fluid came out, it actually melted some insulation on wiring where it sprayed out. So I got to be a lot more conscious of that. I did also look up the type of trans cooler I have. It has 2 Derail 8-inch fans on it, either 8 or 6. I think they're 6s. And I had them pushing through the cooler, and now I have them pulling through the cooler, because they're meant to be a puller fan, and usually when something is meant to be a puller fan, they're more efficient in that direction. So I have a lot less, like driving around, it would hit 200 degrees, just 1 or 2 pulls, and then going through town, it would just start heat soaking, getting hotter and hotter, and you could let it sit there and idle, and it wouldn't really pull any heat out of the transmission. And this time I could pull over, put it in neutral, and it'll actually start pulling heat out of itself. And then I used, for the track last night, didn't know if it would work, but it, thank you Milwaukee, this little fella right here with a 5 amp M18, I put it under the car, and it would cool the transmission off like 30 degrees in about 5 or 10 minutes, which I'm really impressed. I thought I had to get one of those squirrel cage fans and use my generator, but you know, maybe I'll probably end up grabbing one of those, because it's amazing how much heat that transmission holds for as long as it does after a run. Because I had my first run where I didn't know that somebody was next to me, and I thought I was just solo driving, so I was testing out my bump box, and I deep stage. I was on the trans brake, full boost, hit it, and it was in a, what do they call that, like the count. It'll hit the solenoid 3 times at a really small millisecond. I was trying to get the creep function to work, and I went past, but I was waiting for it to change, and then they had to wave me down and say, no, there's somebody else right here, and I can't hear anybody next to me, and when I pulled up, there was nobody. And by the end of the track, it got up to 199 degrees within, like, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds of waiting for the other guy, getting back on the trans brake. So it was kind of a mess, but, you know, we'll get there. I just hope I get this new engine built sooner than later, so I don't have to keep swapping plugs, you know, and that we can actually run more boost, because the sync loss, when you have a misfire also, the ignition noise of the coil not being able to push past the spark plug gap could possibly cause a problem with the ECU as well. You know, everything's grounded where it should be, but I really hope I don't have to chase my tail on this sync loss ECU stuff, because then the only time you can diagnose it is at the track when you have that type of G-force. So, you know, I'll just keep pushing. I'll pull that ECU apart, see what I find. But that's kind of my track update for 6/17.